Exceptionally. Hi, and welcome to If These Heels Could Talk.
I just really wish that people could hear what we say as you're clicking the record button.
No. That's why we purposely say them right before,
because they're not public. They're not public comments.
No, I'm JoyGenea with Solutions by JoyGenea.
And I'm Michelle with Bad Cat Digital. And today we are talking about something that actually impacts a lot of people generationally.
Yes.
Where it's kind of, but it's also built in a personal situation for you. So I want to, I want to give space for that and say we're going to kind of universalize
a
personal experience. So do you want to start?
I can.
You want to present the personal experience?
I, for those that don't know, married the most amazing man. I'm sorry, he's not on the market anymore, but he is also 20-ish. He
is an amazing.
He is, yes. But he is 20 years my senior.
God, right? I thought like 12 or 15.
No,
but
I went.
I guess because he's so young.
Isn't that sweet? That's sweet. He'll appreciate that.
Yes.
When he listens, he'll be like, "Oh, did she say that?" Oh. And it means that right now I'm actually standing in this really interesting spot of having a husband who has more time to do fun things
because he's retired or semi-retired,
still doing a lot of work and so forth. But on a nice sunny day, he might go fishing, like he might ride motorcycle, like
he's just going to get up in the day and decide what he's going to do, and some days he decides to work,
or he's going to take a week off and and go camping. And I am in the process of rebirthing my business in this neurodiversity coaching section, and I'm
still working more than full time, and
it's a very interesting environment. It's a very interesting mindset. That's what I've come to that's the latest understanding.
Well, and I think there are some things that complicate it. I actually think that the interpersonal dynamics and the gender dynamics between you and your husband complicate that.
Absolutely.
From the outside.
Yeah.
His expectations for what his wife should be doing and your expectations for what your partner should be providing are different. And that's complicating this.
It has complicated it for years. I will say the more we've been communicating about, because we've been working on this, like this conversation's been going on the whole time.
It's been an ongoing negotiation.
Now, but recently it's been expanded and expedited, and I
can tell you that if my significant other, if my husband was home 3 days a work week, not working, I would expect him to do a significantly higher percentage of the housework, the cooking, the prep work, the grocery shopping, the laundry. And he already does a lot of those things. So I'm not saying that he doesn't, because he does.
So we've run into that.
Yeah.
A couple of times.
I would expect more.
And it was a good conversation about expectations. I'm like, what do you expect from me? Like we're learning to communicate about expectations and about personalities.
Right.
And that really helps too. Like what are his strengths?
Right.
And working in those, and what are my strengths and weaknesses? And that's an interesting part of it too, because I can have an expectation, but my expectation most often is born from my brain.
Right.
On how I think and would do things.
Right.
Well, I project them onto a person who doesn't think the same as I do, because I married somebody that thinks differently than me.
And has different goals for an outcome.
Right. And so things are perceived differently. The value of when things need to be done. And that I'm learning. What's been great about this is I am learning to negotiate that differently, or to let go and get there. And he's learning to communicate. Well, when do you think I'm going to get this done? And I'm like, well, I want it done now. And he's like, well, that's not what's going to happen. Like, we're learning to have that conversation. Yeah. He's like, I don't feel it's that big of a priority. Can you live till Friday? Oh, yeah, I suppose I can't. I just I didn't often you don't even realize the expectations you put on something until
it creates resentment when it's not met.
Right. Oh, exactly. And
but I feel like that's just a small piece of it. I feel like this came up. We started talking about this a little bit lightly when you came back from a working time away.
Yep.
And talking about, we did a whole podcast about the methods that you use to kind of like be away and working. And one of those methods was to not call it a vacation and have your brain expect vacation time, or let your brain settle into vacation mode. But he's in vacation mode. Like that's literally the mode he's in.
If he would be, except for he's really gotten that he's actually kind of my co-partner.
Okay.
And that was one of the things we got out of the trip is that he checks in the morning, and we have a little whiteboard actually in the camper now that's like, what's JoyGenea's schedule?
Sure.
And so that way he can be co-part. Oh, I got to head out of here. You've got another meeting coming up in 10 minutes.
Right.
So because he's not time blind, he's more conscious of the time.
So he's filling his time and dealing with what he need, whatever he need. Yep. So the pressure is, because I always feel this pressure when traveling to program.
We had that was a couple of negotiations.
Right.
I can't be program director. But I feel like I'm supposed to. Like that's
I still feel like I'm supposed to.
I have this anxiety. I'm having this that I'm not living up to my this is what I normally do.
That my role is not being fulfilled. That I'm not figuring out where we're going to eat. I'm not finding 2 cool things for us to do. I'm not actively participating in these things. And now you're sitting here looking at me while I'm working. Mm-hmm. That doesn't seem like a very fun time for either of us.
No. And we had that conversation a couple of times.
Right.
And he navigated to where he's like, oh, well, that just means that's my time and I can do what I want. And I'm like, yeah, really, that's what that means.
That's what that means.
And
well,
like,
and I think it would surprise people who I put that expectation on myself. My partner does not put that expectation on me. And I once had a really what I thought was going to be a really difficult conversation because I had wanted to go on retreat. I had wanted to go away by myself for a weekend.
Yeah.
And he really was
supportive
against that idea.
Oh, not for that one, huh?
Not for because he thought that I was running away from him.
Oh, well, yeah, with that interpretation I could see why.
Right. Yeah, so it was a defense. Yeah. And I said, but really the thing is that I need to just decompress and think, and I don't need to be worried. I just don't want to be worried about anybody else and what they need or want. I just want to do whatever I want to do at whatever time I want to do it, and I don't want to be considerate of another human while I'm doing it. That's it. If I want to, I don't know what I'm going to do. I might sleep all day. I might not sleep at all.
I just don't want to be responsible for
I just don't want to have to care what you're doing while what I'm doing. I don't want to have to think about it. I don't want to be considerate. I want to be selfish. And so, and in my world, that means I have to physically be alone.
Yes.
But what I've discovered in that conversation was he was like, oh, okay. So maybe we'll do something together, maybe not. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, well, I can do that.
Nice.
And he did.
Yes.
He didn't ask me anything. He left me alone all day. He napped. I napped. Different schedules. It was like 2 people that just, it was like these 2 planets on different.
Yeah.
It was just fine.
Yeah.
And I didn't need to be physically alone. So I think that's what I think about when I think about that. I would worry about being considerate.
Those are the conversations.
I'm saying that word like it's a swear word. Are you hearing that?
I did.
It's not a swear word.
It's not a swear word. I also thought, because we brought up this topic and talking about this, I also thought it was very, it reminds me a little bit, this semi-retirement thing, that reminds me of when we graduated from high school. That's what I can relate it to, or when we graduated from college, and that place where you're stepping into this unknown, and that you're going to make decisions that are going to have consequences till you die. You remember, because there were.
I don't. Oh, that is not ever how I thought about it.
I knew that certain jobs, if I turned down certain jobs, I knew that those doors weren't going to open. I knew getting scholarships by not continuing with school right away after high school was going to shift my access to certain things. You're way smarter
than me. There's no way I thought about that when I was 20.
I'm always, that's part of my problem. I'm always thinking about 100 years ahead, all at once. And
no wonder you married a guy so much older.
I know.
But I'm ching.
So this is kind of like that though. Except for what's I think scary is the variables are so many. Every time we kind of look at different things, you have to make a decision. You just have to make a decision. You have to make the best decision you can today. And literally the government might change its mind on how that plays out. The companies might change their mind, your pensions, things shift. Yeah. And I'm finding more and more your ability to be slightly flexible. You you make tentative plans.
Yeah.
I'm noticing it reminds me a lot of business.
Flexibility is like the key.
Key to this is flexibility. The struggle I'm most having in all of this is the fact that rebranding and remarketing stuff requires creativity.
And you don't have time for it, or the mental or spiritual energy for it, because you're dealing with so many other things.
Right. Because all the other things are linear, right? Like they're buckets, and I just did taxes the other day. Like it's linear. It's buckets and lines and all that kind of stuff. But creative writing and branding and that kind of stuff, you got to sit down for a little bit. Like I got to get the lube going on the gears. I've got to get that thought process going, and then I can start to write in that direct, and find that stuff. And that's what I'm noticing is
I think we should be thinking about some creativity exercises for you. I think we should be thinking about some things that open up that part of your brain a little bit. Mm-hmm. And just some things that get you into that, because I think a lot of times when I think about people who you almost dread, I dread petty, repetitive tasks. I dread them.
Oh yeah.
They always take way less time than I think they're going to take. In fact, I will tell you, perfect example. My inbox was out of control. Now, I had for a while an assistant. It was amazing. Mm-hmm. And she managed my inbox, and she sorted and organized all of my emails. So even,
she did such a darn good job.
She got upgraded.
Spoiled
me.
Well,
she got upgraded to a new team. And so now I don't have one. And she spoiled me.
Yes.
Absolutely spoiled me.
Yeah.
And now whenever my inbox gets out of control, it feels like it's the end of the world.
And it's going to take
forever. And I did not come to work this weekend. I was specifically going to come to work this weekend just to deal with my messy inbox. That's all I was going to do.
Got it.
I had a couple of proposals to write, but I could have done that on Monday. Like, no big deal.
Yeah.
Just to do that. And I didn't. And I beat myself up for it all day. Like I rested instead. And then I felt guilty and all of this stuff. Well, then on Monday, I cleaned up my inbox. It was the first thing I did when I got in, because I promised myself, you don't go on Sunday, I will do it first thing on Monday morning. I will do it. I will get it done. It'll make the whole week feel better. And it did.
Yes.
And this task that I had been dreading and then guilting and then shaming for hours.
Yeah.
Guess how long it actually took? Guess how long it actually took to do?
45 minutes.
12 minutes.
Oh,
12 minutes.
12 minutes.
It took 12 minutes.
That's funny.
So I feel about linear tasks and these really, I dread them.
Yeah.
But that's how you feel. That's how I think people feel about creative tasks.
See, I love the creative tasks. Actually, I love creating but I treat them like I love them and they're special.
Oh,
does that make sense?
Like the last bite of ice cream.
Yes, I'm just
you're like the reason that you eat a burger in the round, so that the last bite is the middle bit.
It's like this perfect. Yes, it's like the sacred thing over there, and I can't do you until I do all these. Like if it were a video game, like I've got to do all these little things to get over to the. And so it means that those things sometimes don't get addressed.
You gotta eat dessert first.
Well, I definitely gotta be getting some more of that done, or my creative juices get used in. It's way more fun to think about being semi-retirement tired people. Like, let me tell you, it's way more exciting to start talking about where can we take my remote working? Where would I like to speak nationally and internationally? Yeah. Like, where would we like to do? And that's far more exciting than being like, let's do taxes. That'll be thrilling.
Well, you know what's super interesting to me?
That's the balance.
But what's super interesting to me about this is that when and you just kind of brought it up when you were talking about speaking, I think you're finding the way to not mold the task or mold the business around the lifestyle, but you're figuring out a way to blend them rather than having them in conflict, because right now they're in conflict with each other.
Well, there's this learning curve. That's what I'm kind of noticing. COVID kind of taught us that. Yeah. Actually, it was like an instant. There's this learning curve phase. I think of many things. If you've not done it before, there's a learning curve phase. And so we're in the learning curve phase, which takes up more creativity. It takes up more time. But I'm noticing we're starting to, we do it again. And we're starting to get a system,
and it's a little bit easier, and it's a little bit easier. And we put a whiteboard in the camper, and then it's a little bit easier, and then we do this, and it's a little bit easier
for packing the camper before we go. It becomes, and that was one of the things I had to do. I had lots of ideas about semi-retirement, and finally I went, you know what? We can't do all of them at once, and if I don't thin this down, and just say, okay, I can have all these ideas. I've now found a way to capture them, but we can only do one at a time.
Right.
And we got to learn certain things before we can have the next like level 2 of this. So it's like,
so let's create some levels out of this.
Level 1. Yeah. Like, let's conquer this. And like when we talked last time, let's leave the state and figure out if we can make our way back and fix the vehicle if it breaks down. Like, let's just travel
just try this
and see how that feels to see if we even want to go to level 2. Maybe you ever done that? You go and try something, you're like, oh, this isn't it. And like I planned way out there and it's like, damn, no.
So this actually, my parents, both of my parents are retired.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad retired before my mom did.
Yeah.
But both of my parents are now retired and they went on a very long road trip. I think it was like 2.5 weeks.
I remember that. Yeah.
They just got back like last week. And they had thought, based on both of them and the way, like they were talking about doing the Route 66 road trip, and they were talking about road tripping through Canada, like from the Midwest to New York and then all the way through Canada to Alaska and then back down. I mean, they were talking about RVing it for 6 months out of the year. They were talking about all of these things.
Yeah.
3 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
All those plans.
Done.
Not going to happen. Done. Yeah. Out the window. Hated it.
They did level 1.
They did level 1 and they were like,
I'm sorry if that was loud.
No, it was, but it was really good because it was what they discovered.
Yes.
Was the part, but the travel was too exhausting.
Yeah.
The pressure to get from one place to another in a day that had
the
like
logistics.
The logistics
of logistics is a pain.
Were a lot.
Yeah.
And so to have to because I love a road trip. I love a road trip.
Yes.
And the logistics of it take planning, take time, take creativity, take critical thinking.
Yes.
They're not laid back or relaxed. Like if you have a road trip planned and you have hotel reservations in that town tonight, you are driving until you get to that town unless you are like the car's got a flat, the whatever.
And then you've got new logistics of canceling one thing and finding something else.
And maybe you're in the middle. And then there's all of those, crime shows that I watch about serial killers in the woods and I can't camp. And so all of those things. So they discovered that not just the logistics of it, but then also the like packing and unpacking and repacking was terrible. And they also discovered that their schedules don't mesh together in such a small environment because dad sleeps in and mom gets up early. And so like dad will sleep until 9 o'clock in the morning, but mom's up by 5:30. So if you're in a hotel room together, what do you do for 3.5 hours?
It's really boring.
It's super boring. You can't watch TV. You're trying to be quiet. You're trying to be like, but if you're in a house or an apartment,
no big deal.
Right. So I think what they discovered is that they would rather spend the money and time on a specific place in a specific place.
Yep.
Like a snowbird, which they never thought they would do.
But that's why you got to try. This is the very interesting thing about the semi-retirement or heading into that. You got to sample things. Like you just, and it takes time and energy. And I've watched people go all in on the giant RV and they've never RV'd before. And I'm like, no, you buy something used and you just kick it a little bit and you try it.
Or rent one for a week. Or 3 days.
Right. And then and then
if you can find a campground in the middle of nowhere, if you can empty the septic yourself, if you can, do these things.
Even care to do any of those things.
Or you don't mind it, or you hate it, or
and those are important things to learn.
And that's a lot of physical work.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to vacation, like I think about a vacation, like I'm going to get somewhere, I'm going to stay there for 2 weeks. I'm not going to move.
That's kind of what the next
and people are just going to bring me stuff.
Well, okay, I don't have that part figured out, but I am working on enough leftovers that I don't have to cook.
I want to sit in a chair.
Oh, real vacation.
Right? Like a loungy kind of environment.
With warmth.
It could be from the sun, could be from a fireplace.
Nice.
I'm not picky.
Nice.
I want to sit in one place that's cushioned and read.
I was just saying, you just want to read.
And have people bring me stuff and take it away all day.
Nice. Wouldn't that be nice?
Like for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Would that be awesome?
That'd be nice.
And I don't want to have to ask for it. And I don't want to have to order it. And I don't want to have to decide anything. I just want it to show up
at noon
on a schedule.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Right?
I think that'd be great. They have places like that.
I know they have places like that.
We just haven't afforded them yet.
Yeah. Well, I can't afford them either. But and a lot of them come with people who touch you and rub on you. And that's not something I'm interested in. You don't touch my feet while I'm doing this.
No.
Or ever really.
On that note.
Anyway,
but stay tuned. We will probably have further conversations.
I think what's super interesting with this is that you're in this this intense time of birth and rebuild and of literal birth, of creating something out of thin air, out of nothing. Mm-hmm. And it's an exciting thing to do. It's a challenging thing to do.
It is.
And it is a time consuming thing to do. And then you're living with somebody who's literally winding down. So the momentum that you have to maintain for yourself has to be even more self-driven, because the partner that you have that's in the same house is going at a completely different speed.
And I want him to, that's the other thing.
And you want him to.
I want him to. He's actually he is not slowing down.
Well, he's struggling to slow down.
But exactly. I was going to say part of why we're doing this is because I did not, I foresaw, because he has a natural inclination to just work.
Right.
Is that he would never stop. And the only stop would just be he was completely done.
Yeah.
And he would never have gotten to do many of the things he'd wished
he wanted to do,
that we would talk about. I could tell that he didn't quite know how to shift into that gear, which is not uncommon.
I have something similar, because my husband is very tied into producing.
Yes.
And so work feels like you're producing. It feels like you're doing something. It feels like you're making something
you're
happen.
Productive. You have value.
But he has two speeds. He has full on production or full on not.
Yeah.
There's very little in between. And so, I can foresee this being a real challenge for us, because I'm very similar, full on production or full on not. I'll work myself until I burn out, and then I will hide in a corner for 3 days
and recoup.
And then I will do it all over again. And you know what? It's kind of who I am. It's kind of what I do. It's not. And the therapists and stuff haven't been able to change it yet. So we'll figure that out.
We can probably just say it's part of your neurology.
But it just is who I am.
Part of your rhythm.
So I just feel like it's going to be very similar.
But you'll be doing it. What's interesting is you'll be doing it at the the time.
Maybe.
Similarly, due to your ages, you'll be closer at it.
So again, though, but circumstance dictates, right? I'm a small business owner and a solopreneur, and a solo owner.
Yes.
So if we were to, if I was to walk away from this, I would be at a loss of what I would do, but we would have, I would only walk away from it if I sold it.
True. Yeah.
So
that would be a different thing.
Right. And then to shift in the middle of the what should be the most productive career years, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot
it'll be interesting.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting.
Well, I should say, knock on wood, I'd only intentionally walk away.
I know, I should say
intentionally. But my husband works for somebody else.
Yeah.
And so he can just get up and go to work and then come home and then go to work and then come home and have a balanced life. And I just don't know, when I started Bad Cat, we were running at different speeds because he was going to work every day. He was actually going to work all week because
he worked out of town.
Yeah, he worked out of town.
Working,
and I was at home alone.
Yeah,
for 5 days at a time.
It was a different.
It was completely different. And then after, I started gearing up the business, and he got laid off before he got another job. I was ready to.
It was a challenge.
Pry the couch cushion off of his behind. I was going to use spatulas. Right? Because I was like, oh my gosh, I've been gone all day. I've done all of this. And you've just sat there.
And you were starting your business. So she was 100 in.
100% of the time. 100 in.
Wide open, full in. And
so very similar. But I think that the difference is that I perceived the break that he was taking as a choice. And that your partner does not you're trying to support him in this.
Yes.
In this goal that he has.
Yes.
Which is to kind of do what he wants to do.
Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but I certainly can't wait to get at a place where that
would be great.
Right. So I figure I have to kind of build the platform to step onto myself when the time comes. I just have, a few years.
There's a couple of years left.
There's a few years on.
Well, thank you for listening to These Heels Can Talk. We really appreciate it. There's a lot of changes and challenges, and we appreciate you listening in, and hopefully you've learned something or it sparked something in your own life. Thanks.
Thanks.